my face was black. My eyes were swollen. I was terrified. That person failed. Whatever their aim was, they failed. And God has given me a life for a reason. That's what keeps me going.
Naomi was on the phone when she notices some kind of strange movements beside her. She turns to look, and there was this dark figure that was following her. This person was putting on a niqab and dressed in all black. But before she could react, she feels a splash in her face, and immediately her skin began to burn. Someone had doused Naomi in acid. Holding on to her belongings, Naomi begins to run home while screaming on top of her lungs.
Naomi Oni got off at this stop, and as she walked along the street, she says she felt a presence behind her. When she turned, she saw a figure wearing a black veil staring at her. She then felt the acid being thrown into her face and ran home screaming.
Welcome to another video with me. Please subscribe to my channel and watch this video to the very end. Today's case is from the UK, and it's about a girl called Naomi Oni. On the 11th of February 1992, Naomi was born to Marian and her husband in the UK. The family are originally from Nigeria, and Marian had always wanted a baby girl according to her, so she was overly happy that Naomi came into her life. You know, Mariam is an albino, so life wasn't exactly easy for her, especially after Naomi's father left her to return to Nigeria, leaving her all by herself to deal with health issues that she had stemming from her albinism. Her eyesight was pretty poor. This made her to, really manage to scale through her struggles. So growing up, Naomi quickly realizes that she was her mother's everything. She cared for her mother right from a young age, constantly looking out for her and, making sure that she was good. In her own words, she says, "I was her spare pair of eyes." Mariam, on the other hand, adored Naomi. She was her only child, the apple of her eyes. She taught Naomi the basic lessons she, as a person who looked different, had learned over the years. She raised Naomi to be smart and confident. Their bond was particularly strong and unbreakable. Naomi herself attended St. Angela's Ursuline School. It's this Catholic secondary school for girls in Forest Gate. So at school, Naomi made friends and was, likable. She and her group of friends were just like the typical majority of thin girls who were into makeup, fashion, and lifestyle. But then there was this other set of girls that bullied Naomi for how she looked. I'm not exactly sure why, because to me, Naomi looks very beautiful. But I guess when one is a bully, they just look for anything to bully someone about. Naomi was going through this, and it began to affect her self-esteem, but somehow she manages to keep it away from everyone around her. In front of the bullies and everyone else, she was confident and outspoken, but behind closed doors, she would cry her heart out, and soon enough, she began to struggle with her school because of what she was dealing with at the time. At about that same time that all this was happening to Naomi, another girl in her group of friends, was also being bullied as well. As for her, it was all about her looks. The bully said that she looked funny. Her name was Konye. Somehow, Naomi felt like it was her duty to protect Mary because on her own, Mary wasn't doing anything to ward off these bullies. Naomi, was a smart mouth, she could talk a lot. So she knew how to handle them, and she did. She stood up for Mary each time someone came at her for, looking a certain kind of way. Now, the girls all graduated from secondary school and left all that life behind them. But the friends kept in touch with each other, They would chat each other up once in a while and, arrange a meetup or hang out for drinks. At this time, each of them were doing their individual things already. They were growing into adults, and Naomi really wanted to, become a makeup artist. She loved doing makeup and she was very good at it, but she needed the exposure to up her career. So she gets a job working in Victoria's Secret at the Westfield Shopping Center, and she asked to be placed at the beauty department, which she was. So she was, very, very happy about her new job. It would give her the experience that she needed to break through in her chosen career. It seemed everything was going good for Naomi, and she had grown into this very beautiful lady, and she was in a relationship that she cherished as well. But all that came crumbling down on the night of December the 29th, 2012. So that fateful night, per usual, Naomi had worked her shift at the Victoria's Secret lingerie store at the Westfield Shopping Center in Stratford. It was a couple of days after Christmas, and according to her, she was feeling some type of way because every other person had time off for the holidays, to be with their families and their loved ones. Her godmother, her uncle, and several of her cousins had come over from Ireland, and her mom was cooking Nigerian delicacies. She didn't want to go to work and leave all of that behind, but she had no choice. She had to work. Anyways, that particular day she finishes up her shift at about 11:30 that night. So she and her other colleagues that worked the same shift left the store together and they walked to the train station. It was a normal night. There was nothing, out of the ordinary. They were just chatting away until they all separated and went their different destinations. Then Naomi boarded the train going from Stratford to West Ham. When she alighted, she boarded another train that went from West Ham to Barking. From here, she was supposed to, take a bus and arrive at a bus stop in Dagenham. Then she would just walk the short distance to her home. But first, she needed to get something to eat because she was seriously hungry. So she branched into, a fast food and buy some food that she intended to eat when she got home. She bought a bus that takes her to her final bus stop on Lodge Avenue. It was only then that it dawned on her that it was really, really late already. When she looks around, it's kind of lonely. It was already past 12 midnight and she didn't want to be by herself walking home like that. So she calls up her boyfriend, to just stay on the line with her until she gets home at least. Her home, which was at the Bromhall Road, was not that far from her bus stop. But walking wasn't a problem. It's just that she needed company, to ease the loneliness while she was walking home. According to Naomi, while she was on the phone, she then notices movement beside her. And that movement caught her attention. So she kind of turned her head to, in a bit to look. And she noticed a dark figure just following her. This person that was following Naomi was putting on a niqab. If you don't know what a niqab means, it's just this clothing that Muslim sisters wear that covers everything except for just their eyes. So according to Naomi, this niqab wearing individual, when she turned to look at her, just stared at her right in her face, and it was very, very cold. Immediately, she felt something was off. In her mind, she was like, okay, what's going on? What does she want with me? Mind you, she was still on the phone with her boyfriend. All she wanted to do at that time was just to hurry out of there. So she increased her pace and started to run. Basically, she started hurrying home. She was just opposite her house by this time, and all she needed to do was just to cross the road and get in front of her home. As she was about to make that cross, she feels this splash on her face. Something liquid had been poured on her by this black person that had been following her. As soon as she felt it hit her, she knew immediately that she was in trouble. Still holding on to her belongings, she began to run the rest of the distance home while screaming on top of her lungs, "It's burning, it's burning, it's burning," because whatever it was really burning her. She could feel the burn instantly. She didn't need to be told that that substance that had been splashed on her was acid. As Naomi runs to her door, she is screaming and banging on the door for her family to open it for her. A family member gets the door. I think it was her godmother, Lily. When she opens that door, Naomi runs past her straight to the bathroom, screaming and crying. According to her godmother, Lily, she could perceive that distinctive smell of acid. She worked as a pharmacist, so she knew what it was instantly. She encourages Naomi to get under the shower as quickly as she could. Maybe water will help dilute or wash off the corrosive substance, but was it really of any help at this point? By this time, Naomi could feel her skin coming up literally. The clothes she was wearing was literally tearing apart from the parts where the liquid had touched. Her lashes were coming up, just, falling off like feather, basically. It was burning so bad. Naomi compared what was going on with her face at that particular time She compared it to pouring boiling water to cold glass. That means she was feeling her face just crack, basically.
To me, like, I thought my skin was like dissolving, like I was just gonna, I don't know, like corrode away.
I listened to the call her Uncle Charles made to the emergency services that night, and it was so heartbreaking. You could feel the pain of the hopelessness in his voice, as he didn't know what to do to, help her out of her situation.
Hello, police emergency.
My niece was just coming in and they poured acid on her face.
What's on her face?
They poured acid on her face.
Who did?
We don't know who. She was just coming back from work and someone threw it on her face. Oh my goodness.
What's her name?
Naomi?
Yeah?
Naomi.
After the call by her uncle to the police, the ambulance was sent to the home, but that short period of time that they all had to wait for the ambulance to get there was so agonizing. Naomi's skin at this point was melting up basically, and she hadn't stopped screaming in pain for a second. When the ambulance arrived, Naomi asked her mother not to ride with her. You can imagine how in this condition she was still, she still wanted to protect her mother. She didn't want her to freak out and witness what else would, she would go through, because she understood at this point it's serious. This is acid. There was more to come definitely, and she was very aware of it. Her godmother was the one who rode with her to the hospital. So when they arrived at the hospital, the first responders wrapped Naomi's face in gauze. The skin was falling off badly, so they needed to keep it, together until it could be examined properly. Naomi remembered she was going in and out of consciousness at this point. She could hear as the doctors and nurses were going up and down trying to get her comfortable and give her the best care that they could at the time, but she was really drifting away at this point. Then the nurses came up to her to let her know that a generous amount of the corrosive liquid had gotten into her eyes, and the only way to wash it out was with saline. So they pried open her eyes, which by the way had no more eyelids on it. It had melted off basically, and then they washed the eyes with saline. The damage that was done to Naomi's eyes was pretty bad, and doctors did say that she might, lose her eyesight completely. Nurses continued to wash her eyes in saline as Naomi screamed in pain and agony.
I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I've lost my face, my skin is burnt, and my eyes, like I can't see.
Now, after the initial treatment at London's Whitechapel Hospital, Naomi was then transferred to a specialist burn unit at Brunswick Hospital in Chelmsford, Essex. Here, doctors began to battle to keep her from going completely blind and also trying to keep her from losing more skin, but Naomi's condition worsened. She could see at this point that her body, according to her, was shutting down already, but there was hope. Her family rallied around her and kept encouraging her to hold on, and she did. During the weeks that Naomi spent at the hospital throughout January of 2013, doctors began to do what they could to reconstruct her face. They took skin from the back of her ear to reconstruct her eyelids, because she had none at this point. They were all burnt off. Then they took skin from her thighs to reconstruct her face. Basically, it was to replace part of the skin that had fallen off her face. Mind you, the liquid didn't affect just her face. It was on her neck, her shoulders, and even parts of her thighs. But the face was the main target, so it got majority of the substance. Now, after the surgery, Naomi was in recovery and she was gradually, beginning to see. Just little by little, her eyesight began to return, and her family covered the windows and mirrors so that she couldn't catch a glimpse of her reflection just yet, They were actually trying to protect her from herself. She was used to looking a certain way. They didn't think that she was mentally prepared for what she looked like at that particular moment. But one day, she catches a glimpse of her face on her cell phone screen, and what she saw broke her heart into pieces. In her own words, it looked nothing like her. She began to cry and asked her family members, who is going to marry me like this? Who would ever want her? At that moment, she could see that her future was very bleak. Naomi was hurting badly, physically, emotionally, and mentally.
Naomi Oni says that when she saw her injured face for the first time, she didn't want to live.
While all of this was going on, the police were, investigating in the neighborhood where the attack had taken place. They were, in fact, going door to door, but no one had actually seen the attack happen. It was just the two of them, Naomi and the perpetrator, that were on the street at the early hours of the morning. So Even though they heard her screams, the neighbors did not exactly see what had happened. The police, however, did get CCTV footage that will, share more light on Naomi's movement that day, and they didn't see anything suspicious on it at first. So they turned to Naomi for help to question her if she had ever been threatened by anyone as regards pouring acid on her, and she thought hard and long, but there was none. But she remembered something that could help. It didn't seem like it was much at the time, but someone had told her before, not as a direct threat though, but just a statement that they had considered pouring acid on her before, because they were not in good terms at the time. That person was none other than her friend Mary Konye, the same Mary she had protected while in school. But Naomi didn't even believe Mary would do this to her. She only mentioned it to the police because that's the only scenario where anything regarding acid was mentioned to her hearing. Mary was a close friend of Naomi's, but a year prior they had fallen out because of a misunderstanding they had, which they had long settled and continued with the friendship. And when Mary had made that statement to Naomi just took it as a joke. She didn't take it seriously because there was absolutely no reason to. Aside this, Mary had really been very supportive since the incident happened to Naomi. Mary had been calling and texting Naomi every day, consistently checking on her, caring for her. She wanted to even come to be with her at the hospital, but at the time, only family members were allowed. So how could it be that the same Mary would do this to her? Whether Naomi believed it or not, whether Naomi believed that Mary could hurt her or not, she had given the police a lead, and so they took it and they ran with it. Mary was brought in for questioning 6 weeks after Naomi was attacked on the 22nd of February 2013. I listened to the interview tape and she was very calm and collected. But when she was asked if she had threatened to throw acid on Naomi, she responded with, "Acid? No."
Do you want to tell me how you know Naomi?
Yeah, I've known Naomi since secondary school.
How would you describe your relationship with Naomi?
Yeah, I think we're quite close. Like, we speak regularly on the phone. The officer did point out that she said something, we had an argument like over a year ago.
And she said that in that argument that you said that you wanted to throw acid in her face.
Acid? No.
She said that to the best of her knowledge, she couldn't recall ever saying anything like that, and that she still does not understand why someone or anyone would do that to Naomi. After the interview, Mary was released on bail because at this point, the police had nothing on her. Months went by and the police were doing nothing. The investigations was just at a standstill. There was no lead, just nothing to go off on. Naomi, on the other hand, was going through it. News had spread since that it must have been someone close to Naomi that had done this to her. So she was staying away from everyone except from her family, of course. She was really scared for her safety. If this person who had done this was close to her and they had not been caught, then she must still be in danger, right? Meanwhile, Naomi had these two close friends who were also close friends with Mary Konye. Remember, they had all been in the same circle while at school. They began to speculate that if truly whoever did this was close to Naomi, then it would be none other than Mary Konye. But they couldn't say it out because they had no evidence at the time. They knew their friend very well and what she was capable of doing. They knew that behind all of that smiles and hangouts and friendships, that Mary was low-key very jealous of how beautiful and confident Naomi was. But how would they have proved this without any form of evidence? Meanwhile, unknown to Naomi, the table had turned on her. The police began to think that Naomi must have, done this to herself. At first, it wasn't clear why they would think that she might have been the architect of her own misfortune, but I will explain all of that to you in a bit. The police went to Naomi to question her about gang affiliation. She told them point blank that she wasn't about that life. She was just a normal 20-year-old going home from her job and a random person did this to her. Why did they have to insinuate that she must have been a gang member because something of this nature had happened to her? She was also confused and bitter that the police would even think that she had gone out, purchased acid and then doused herself in it. Why would she even think of a thing like that when she was so self-conscious, very into beauty and wanted to become a makeup artist? Just why? It just didn't make any sense. But even with all her explanations, the police didn't believe her, and somehow this theory got leaked to the press and they took the information and ran with it. It was on newspapers and magazines that Naomi had purposely poured acid on herself, and people were actually beginning to believe these stories. The reason all of this has happened in the first place was because the police had gone through Naomi's laptop, and in the process of the investigations, they discovered that she had researched Katie Piper. Now, Katie Piper was another acid attack survivor that had become, very famous after her boyfriend had planned the attack on her. Then they also discovered that Naomi had Googled eyelid surgery. So when they put 2 and 2 together, they believed that Naomi had purposely arranged all of this. They thought that she wanted to be as famous as Katie Piper. Initially, Naomi was not even aware of what the newspapers and blogs were saying at the time. She had, in fact, just gotten out of another surgery the day she got to know about this, and it broke her heart. In her own defense, she did say that she had always had her own insecurities, and she only Googled Katie Piper because Katie had eyelid replacement surgery, and since she had a double eyelid, she wanted to see if it would be something that she would fix in her future, and that was that. She never planned for acid to be thrown on her just to be famous. It hurt her badly that the media was spreading this lies about her, courtesy of the police. When Naomi got out of the hospital, she couldn't go on with her life. She had been disfigured, and her attacker was still out there, and the police were blaming her for her own attack. So she was, kind of miserable, and depression was already staring her right in her face. When her family convinced her to fight for herself, they told her to go to the media. Since it was the media that was pushing this untrue narrative out there, it was better for her to speak her truth, stand up for herself like she had been taught growing up. Then maybe the police would say that she did not do this to herself, and they will now do the needful and investigate properly. Her godmother Lily went into action and booked Naomi TV and newspaper interviews, and Naomi made her first TV appearance post the attack.
If they happen to be watching?
I just want them to realise the pain they've put myself and my family through.
Someone will catch them so they don't do it to anybody else.
Exactly, I don't want them to do it to anyone else. I don't want other girls or other people having to go through what I've gone through.
Meanwhile, when all of this had been happening, lots of Naomi's ex-schoolmates, co-workers, and generally people who knew her hadn't seen her physically aside, the pictures that they had seen in papers. So when they saw her live on TV for the first time, they were really shocked at, the extent of her injuries. Naomi during the interview broke down as she said that she wanted the person who did this to her to be caught, and she didn't want another person to go through what she was going through. But she just also wanted to know why. Why did this happen to her in the first place? She cried a lot during the interview. You could see how vulnerable she was at that moment. One of the interviewers even had to go over to her and, hold her to reassure her it was going to be okay. When this interview was going on back at the police precinct, they were watching, and I think this kind of worked to Naomi's advantage because that interview made the police to, order a review of Naomi's case. But before we talk about that, let me say here that after this interview, Naomi's friend Mary Konye was the first to send her a text message. She wrote, "Oh my God, it doesn't even look like you. I watched the interview this morning. It was heartbreaking. I teared up. It's horrible." She was acting all caring and being a good friend, not knowing that she was holding on to a very dark secret. Well, an immediate review of the case was ordered, and investigation started afresh with the homicide team taking over this time, even though the case was clearly not a homicide. So the first thing they did was to, go back to the CCTV footage that was analyzed by the first team, and they reanalyzed it. They went through it once again. It was then that they noticed that indeed there was a woman putting on black and a Niqab who had been following Naomi every step of the way. They also noticed that this woman was carrying this distinctive handbag. I think it was grey in color. It was one of these big size handbags. I don't know the brand, but it was a big size handbag. This person was following Naomi right from Stratford, but Naomi had no clue. One thing that caught the investigators' eyes was that particular handbag, they had in fact seen it before somewhere. So to be sure, they rolled back the custody tape of the day Naomi's friend Mary Konye had been brought in for questioning because, of the alleged threat that she had made to Naomi, and boom, there it was. Mary had been carrying that exact handbag when she was at the police station. So without wasting time, Mary was tracked down and then brought back to the station. They got a warrant to search her place and they retrieved that particular handbag and sent it to forensics for analysis. And there was no doubt when the result returned that that particular bag had substantial damage resulting from acid. So Mary Konye was now officially arrested. Upon further investigations, the police got to know that following the attack on Naomi, her friend Mary Konye uploaded a Freddy Krueger picture on her BlackBerry phone with a caption reading, "Who looks like wrong turn now?" She didn't leave it up for long. She took it down pretty quickly, but many people had seen it already before she took it down. But at that particular time, nobody knew what she meant. Nobody knew what she was talking about or what she was referring to. But now they now understood. It was now all coming together. It was making sense now. When the two video footages were compared, the one with the CCTV of the woman in Niqab and the one of Mary moving around at the police station, it was quite clear that both individuals had a distinctive way of walking. They walked like one leg was shorter than the other. A specialist was brought in to compare these two, and he came to the conclusion that they were of course the same persons, in the both footages. So now there was absolutely no doubt who had done this to Naomi. It was Mary Konye. Naomi's other friends, like I said from the beginning, already had their suspicions. So when they had the news that Mary had been officially arrested, they didn't sweat. It was just like a confirmation of what they had already known. Naomi, on the other hand, couldn't believe this. She had been friends with Mary for so long. She had stood up for her since they were 11 years old, basically. Mary had been so nice to her throughout all of these trying periods, and she had even been at Naomi's house after the incident to, celebrate her 21st birthday when she couldn't go out following the attack. Naomi was heartbroken when she came to terms with the fact that Mary had indeed done this to her. She and Mary had been friends for many years. She didn't just understand why she would, do this to her. Mary Konye was born on 20th February 1992 in Newham, East London. Her father had passed away when she was just only about 2 years old at the time, leaving her mother as a single parent to look after Mary. Mary was a student at the University of Hertfordshire, and she had been studying accounting and finance and business while holding down jobs in retail at New Look, Forever 21 and Next when all of this went down. It wasn't like her life was stagnant. She was just a semester away from earning her degree. So she had a lot going on for her. So what she did does not even make sense. Why would she just want to throw away her life because of, jealousy? I don't understand. Like I said, Mary even celebrated Naomi's 21st birthday with her at her home when she, was recovering from this attack that had caused her, to lose her hair and her eyelashes and even require skin graft surgery to cover her burns. So Naomi at first would not just wrap her head around this entire situation. Their friends think that Mary was always jealous of how beautiful Naomi was, and she wanted Naomi's lighter skin compared to her own darker skin. She had even been matching her makeup to Naomi's lighter skin makeup at a point, but Naomi wasn't paying attention at that time. She didn't notice any of this intense hatred and jealousy and, wanting to be like her. Now, after Mary Konye's arrest, her trial began on the 6th of January 2014, just over a year after the attack had taken place. By this time, Naomi was feeling a lot better. She had undergone, procedures to give her temporary eyebrows, and she was happy with it. She came to court every day to face her frenemy, Mary Konye. Mary pleaded not guilty, and her team argued that Naomi had planned the attack on herself and had asked Mary to help her out for, the fame and fortune, just like the newspaper had reported initially. So this was their own line of defense, that Naomi had been paid a couple of thousands of pounds for, interviews already. And that showed that she always wanted fame. This doesn't make sense to me, honestly, but that was their own line of defense. Mary stood on that stand and told Naomi to her face that they planned it together. Mary said that she even asked Naomi at the last minute to cancel the plan as she didn't want to go through with it anymore. So Naomi had actually taken the acid and then thrown it on herself. How possible is that? Naomi was shocked and in disbelief at what was actually coming out of Mary Konye's mouth. I mean, who was this person? She didn't know this side of Mary. There was absolutely no remorse in Mary. It was just lies upon lies that came out of her mouth. And that hurt Naomi a lot. Let me not leave this part out. Now, the reason Mary had even threatened Naomi in the first place That's when they had fallen out, was because in April of 2011, Mary had sent a message to Naomi's then boyfriend telling him that Naomi was loose and had been unfaithful to him, which wasn't true at all. Naomi didn't understand why Mary would do this, apart from just basically maybe trying to ruin what she had going on as per relationship-wise. So angrily, Naomi had called her a very ugly monster, and this touched a sensitive part of Mary, who for all these years had always felt inferior and jealous of Naomi's beauty. This same boyfriend was the one Naomi was on the phone with the day that she was attacked, and he broke up with her following the incident, so he wasn't even worth it. Naomi was questioned on the stand why she researched Katie Piper and the eyelid surgery, and she responded with, "I do not think I was very pretty at all. I went to the site for no reason in particular. I had body issues and I was interested in plastic surgery for my body, but there was no particular reason. I remember searching for my eyelids because I had double eyelids which I didn't like, so I planned one day to see if I could, do something about it." Mary was aware that Naomi had these insecurities about her, but she didn't just, understand why she should, because in her eyes, Naomi was perfect. But knowing that Naomi was so scared of what had happened to Katie Piper, she decided to use what she was afraid of the most to hurt her. During the trial, investigators provided proof that Mary's phone pinged right at the crime scene when it was taking place at that particular time. Then cell phone data also showed that she had sent a text message to transport services asking about timetables for buses plying Naomi's route going towards her home address. She had also used her Oyster card on the bus that Naomi had taken that evening. She had also asked another friend who was studying chemistry at her school whether there was any acid stored in the lab. Mary had also told the friend that she wanted to throw acid in Naomi's face so that she would know how it feels to be unhappy with her appearance. These were no mere coincidences. Mary was actually planning really hard ahead of the attack. In court, the text messages that Mary had sent to Naomi in the days following the attack was read out to the jury. Naomi had sent Mary a text message saying, "I even wished I was ugly. I preferred that to looking like this." And Mary replied with, "Don't worry, you're not going to look like this forever." To which Naomi again responded, "I can't even wish this on my enemy." Yet, she didn't know that her own friend that she had been texting for support was the architect of her own misfortune. On the 23rd of January, the jury deliberated for 7.5 hours and unanimously found Mary Konye guilty. She was charged with throwing a corrosive fluid with the intent to burn, maim, disfigure, disable, or do grievous bodily harm, and she was sentenced to 12 years in prison on March 21st, 2014. Mary did a lot of things initially, apart from the time that she obviously threatened Naomi, and Naomi didn't read meaning to it. So maybe if she paid more attention, I think she would have, cut off all communications and cut off all ties with Mary, because it was said that Mary had basically copied her clothes, her hairstyle, even mimicking the way she spoke, the way she laughed, and the way she walked. Naomi says, quote, "If I wrote text, spoke, laugh or walk in a certain way, she would do that too, and then she would say, 'I look just like you, don't I?' I mean, this is borderline stalkerish and disturbing. It was the pattern that no one acknowledged until it got too late." Mary Konye basically admired Naomi to the point of obsession, and she was obviously insecure about her own looks. Even at that small birthday party Naomi had in February of 2013 after the attack, it was said that Mary actually came flaunting herself in a highly inappropriate bootsuit and, miniskirt. It was as if she was saying, "Look at me and look at you." Naomi said, quote, "I told everyone, please don't cry for me. I want everyone to be happy." But Mary was the idiot who sat on the arm of my chair sobbing, and I had to rub her back. She wrote in her card to me, "Happy birthday, beautiful. Love, Mary." If this wasn't pure evil, I don't know what to call it. Well, Naomi is doing well now, and she doesn't look the same, but you can't deny that she's still very gorgeous and beautiful as ever. She has since picked up her life, while Mary Konye is still in jail serving time for what she did. The sad part of this whole case, apart from the fact that Naomi got disfigured and endured immense pains, of course, was that these were both beautiful black ladies. What's the deal with the hate? There was no need for that level of bitterness on the part of Mary Konye. So that's it for today's case, guys. Thank you for watching till the very end. I really do appreciate. But before you go, kindly subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And then I'll see you in next video.